Hello, today we're going to be making a couple of projects from the Brutus Monroe Black Friday free gifts that you can receive with purchases. They can be stacked, and there is a flyer to show the different levels. My name is Donna Shop or Donna T Crafting on the socials, and we're going to be making these three projects. The first project, we're going to use one of the free gifts. It's called a Candy Cane Christmas. It's a stencil collection, and this one has 4 stencils in it. Has different images on the stencil, such as the lights, sentiment, gingerbread, and some trees. And we're going to focus on the trees in this first project. We're going to use some heat-resistant vellum, and I'm going to put the stencil down on the vellum, and I am taping it down so it doesn't move, number one, and then I'm going to mask off or tape off the gingerbread. I'm also marking on the vellum so I know I can line up the next stencils very easily. I've lined them up at the bottom of the stencil, and then I put lines on my vellum because I'm going to be cutting my vellum down so that I know that I line up the stencil each time. So now I'm going to mask off the gingerbread men, and off camera I masked off some of the Christmas trees, and because I'm going to do the trees in a little bit different colors. 3 of the trees, every other one, I'm going to do in these 2 green colors. They're the Simon Hurley inks. I'm going to be using Later Gator first, and then I'm going to come back and darken the edges with some fake plant, which is a little bit darker green. I'm going to use that on, like I said, the first 3 trees. And this is the first stencil, or what I picked as the first stencil to use. It looked like it was a good base stencil with all the base of the trees. So we're going to add in this Later Gator, just quickly adding in some color across all of these. As I said before, these free gifts, you get a free gift with a purchase, and then every $25 up to $100, there's an additional free gift added. So they are stacked. And then after that, it's every $50 up to $300. And there's some great items. This Candy Cane Christmas collection there are paper pads, there's stamps, there's dies in this part of the free gift. So you can get a lot of this whole collection if you like it. And I think it's really kind of cool, all the different pieces and parts of it. It makes such great Christmas cards and easy Christmas cards to make, because this didn't take long at all to go through and stencil off some Christmas trees, and then the card comes together fairly quickly after that. So here I'm adding in the fake plant, which is the darker green. I'm adding that on the outside edges so that it has a little bit of darkness on the outside edges. It's not much of a difference, but it's a little bit of a difference. It'll give the trees a little bit of contrast in those 2 green colors. After I get this green on here, I'm going to wipe down my stencil quickly so that I don't get the green into the next colors as I move to them. So I just take a microfiber cloth and wipe it off. It doesn't have to be perfect, but get off a good part of that ink so it doesn't get into the next couple of trees when I mask off these to do the other 2 trees that are between them. So I'm going to move my tape, and I have the other 2 trees. For these trees, they're kind of layered, so I'm going to, this layer on these 2 trees, I'm going to use, again, the Simon Hurley ink, and I'm using the lighter green, which is called Overzealous. And I'm just going to add those to the layers of this on this stencil. I also masked off on, when I masked this off, there's some stars in between the trees, and I masked that off because I'll be adding that in on a later stencil. So we added the Overzealous for these layers, and again, wipe it off a little bit. Even though I'm taking this stencil off, it's a lot easier to wipe it off, and then we don't have a mess later. Then we're going to come in with our second stencil. This is what you can kind of see where I'm going on the bottom of the vellum. I'm doing this. With the second stencil, I'm going to fill in those stars that I talked about before. And on the stars, I am using some Shooting Star ink, again from Simon Hurley. It's a yellow, it's a bright yellow. And I'm just going to quickly add a little bit of yellow to each of the stars. I'm being careful because I didn't tape off everything. Kind of taped off some parts and pieces and didn't tape off all the other parts and pieces. So I added in the yellow. And then we're going to come back. This is the layered look that we had before. For the other layers, I am going to use Remember Me, which is kind of a dark teal color. We're going to use that for the second layer. So it's going to be a bright green and a dark teal on these two trees. And I really wanted to experiment here, doing some of this ink blending on vellum and see how it turned out. On this, I am adding in some Love Struck, which is a bright red. I'm doing this for the ornaments on this tree. And I'm doing this over what we had done before. There wasn't a masking of the ornaments, but doing this red over this green on the vellum kind of moves some of that green out of the way, and the red turns out really nice on it. So I'm also adding it on this other tree on the right hand side. I'm going to add those items in red on that one. And then for the first tree, I'm going to come back and we're going to use some yellow again on the first and the third tree. The third tree, you know, we've been doing, we did red balls on it. Now I'm going to go back and add some yellow balls. And then on the first tree, there are stars on that tree. So I'm using the yellow for those stars as well. And then there's the stars on the tops of each of the trees. So I decided those needed to be yellow as well. With vellum, it's more of a muted color when you blend on this. That's why I keep going back over it a couple of times to try to add a little bit more layering on the ink. But it is, you know, a much lighter color. It's not like going to be a real heavy color on the vellum. It just doesn't take the ink quite as much as paper does. It doesn't soak it in. It kind of sits on top of it for a little bit. So it just becomes a little bit lighter. On this second tree, there is some more layers to add. I'm going back with the overzealous. It's kind of alternating. You know, the first layers were overzealous, then the Remember Me, and then overzealous again. So you can see we've got some that layering happening. We've got some stars started. This next stencil is going to add in some more stars on tops of trees. Add a little bit of layers on that fourth tree. And then I masked off the other pieces that I didn't want to cover in yellow. I am adding a little bit of dark green to the base or the trunk of the far right tree. And then for the middle tree, I am going to use my Remember Me, which is my dark teal, for this layer of balls. So we've had red ornaments, we've had yellow ornaments, and now I'm adding in some dark teal ornaments onto this tree. And then we'll be adding to the second tree our final layer with Remember Me as well. And that will complete that tree. So as we're finishing these up, again, it just adds a little bit of color for all these by doing these layers of ink. For these bottom areas, I am using a little bit darker red on this. So that it stands out a little more. It's closer to, you know, kind of a darker maroon color. I just thought it would stand out a little more with that darker color. So now the big reveal, and you can see we've got our 5 trees, some stars around it, and then that bottom darker color on it. You can see I did get ink on the sides, but that's okay because I'm going to be cutting it down. Now, I am going to use another one of the free gifts. This is the 49 and Market Evergreen Season Sentiments Rub-Ons. And my thought here is I want to use this kind of gold burst behind the trees. I think that looks really cool. And then I'll use one of the sentiments behind the trees as well. So I cut the gold burst out of this huge sheet of rub-ons, sentiment and rub-ons. There's 3 sheets in this pack, and they are very large sheets. So I cut out the gold burst that I wanted, and I'm lining it up on my card so that my middle tree star is kind of in that white middle of the burst is what I was lining it up for. So I'm lining it up so that it lines up there. I take off the backing paper from the rub-on that I cut out, and then I'm going to just put my tree on there and then lay it down so that that lines up the way I want it to on this panel. This is after I cut down my panel. I cut down a white panel to the same size as my vellum as well. So I lay it down, get it where I want it, kind of press it in place a little bit. Now with these rub-ons, you can rub them on with like a bone folder. I ran it through my die cut machine and it worked wonders. It peeled off very easily. So that worked real well. And then I cut on one of the other sheets. They had this really cool Happy Holidays sentiment, and I think that will look wonderful across the top of the card here. So I cut that out. We're going to do the same thing with it. We're going to line it up so it's straight, press it down a little bit, and then I'm going to run it through the die cut machine again just to make it easy to pull off. Now I did have a little bit of snag here. When I pulled it off, I had a couple of places it wasn't quite stuck down, so I pushed it down and tried to rub it on, and that worked a little bit until I got to the very end, and that long thing after the S kind of pulled off. When I pulled it off, that pulled off with the paper, which was okay because you can always lay it back down and rub it on after the fact as well. So you can see here I'm pulling it. I'm trying to be very gentle, and it kind of popped up on me, and that last piece was still on there. So I'm just going to line it up here and then use my fingernail to kind of really press it on to make sure that it sticks, and then again come back and pull it up gently and it will stick this time. Just have to work with it a little bit sometimes with these rub-ons to make sure that they're fully stuck down before you lift that paper. So there we have our background for our vellum on this card. Now we have to adhere our vellum to this sheet. I had never worked with vellum tape before. I'll just admit I happened to have some in my supplies. I don't even know where it came from. So I decided I was going to try it with this card. And I put vellum on that darker red part. I thought that would be a great way to hide it. And then I put a little bit up where kind of under the sentiment into that gold area. I thought that would be a great way to hide it. Now I do have to come back later. You won't see that in this video, but later I did put a couple pieces in the corners. The vellum tape worked pretty well. I think mine is pretty old, so it had a little bit of a yellower tint, so I was glad I put it into that yellow part. But it held pretty well, and I was kind of impressed that you really couldn't see it when I put it behind those, so that was kind of cool. Now I'm just going to be adding this to a card panel that says 5.5 by 4.25. I used some holiday plaid paper to put behind it. Just very simple. And as you can see, we have a pretty much completed card. I'm just going to add a few gems to it. I'm going to use the red shift to cover the red ornaments on this middle tree just to give that a little pop. And then I'm going to add a few topaz gems just randomly around the card. These are also from Brutus Monroe. Not sure if they're in stock right now, but I have heard they're going to be coming back in stock, or there may be some new colors that are coming into stock in 2026. So look for those in the future. I've had these gems for quite some time, I think since they came out, and uh, you can't even tell I've used them. My little pots of gems are still pretty full, so they do last quite a long time. And I use them quite a bit. So here I'm adding a few little dots of glue. I use the Barely Arts glue, adding that around the card to adhere my gems. And I just added 5 gems in random places around the card to add a little more sparkle for this card. Maybe I'll add just one more. I think I need just another one. Never can hurt to add just another one. And there you have. That's the first card using one of the free stencils and um, the free rub-ons. Now for this next card, I did some of the stuff off camera. I used some sprays on a card panel. I used this leaf green chroma mist. I used candy apple red chroma mist. And then I topped that with some copper shimmer chroma mist um, to give kind of a very shimmery, coppery looking with the red and the green in the background. I cut this down 3 3/4 by 5 is what I cut it down to, and then I pulled some red cardstock from my stash and put that on top of it using foam tape. Here I'm going to use the Happy Holidays stamp set, which is this beautiful poinsettia and some greenery. I stamped these, the greenery in green, and I stamped the poinsettia in like that dark red or kind of burgundy color, and then I colored them with my Copic markers. And we're going to put this on this panel here. Laying it out. I'm not going to use all that greenery. It's a little too much. And then I'm going to come in with that 49 and Market Evergreen Season Sentiments rub-ons. And I'm going to pick out a sentiment. I think I'm going to keep it small, so I'm going to pick this small Merry Christmas one in red. And then my thought is I want to use, there's a sheet that has all these music, just music stuff on it, and I think I want to use that on the background of this as well. So I'll cut out my sentiment. You just cut these out and then you can save the rest of the rub-ons for future projects. So there are a lot of sentiments in this pack. So it's a really great item for a free gift. I'm going to pick a couple of the dark green music lines here. I'm going to pick this one at the bottom and one at the top, and I'm going to cut those out to put behind my flowers and my flower and my greenery. I'm just going to randomly lay these on that panel. But before we do that, before we put that down, I decided my panel needed a little bit more to it. So I am going to take some green shimmer splash. Now I am using a green shimmer splash from last year. I believe there's a new green shimmer splash now, or maybe it's an aqua splash, but all of the shimmer splashes and the aqua splashes are really, really awesome. I think they're one of the greatest things to use to add some interest to your backgrounds and to really jazz up your cards a little bit. So we'll do that in just a minute. I'm going to add these music notes on here. For this one, I didn't run it through the die cut machine because I already had my panel down on my card um, prior to putting this on there. So I just used my finger and a bone folder to really work these off. So I added those offline. Um, like I said, I just used my finger and a bone folder and it worked just as fine. You just have to be careful as you pull it off. Here's the green shimmer splash that I used. I just tapped it in random places. And then I wasn't getting it in a couple places that I wanted to. So one of the things that I like to do if I can't get it by tapping it is I make sure my brushes doesn't have a ton of it on there and I just go through and lightly like touch it to the stock with different amounts of pressure to give random dots that way. If I can't get my splatter to work the way I want it, I make my own splatter just by adding dots in here and there. So that's what I'm doing here. Then we're going to put that Merry Christmas sentiment up here on the top, and you can layer these rub-ons, which I did. I layered that over the music notes. I added the poinsettia, um, the colored poinsettia. I added that on some foam tape on there, and then I'm just going to glue down that bit of greenery from the top. I'm just going to use the Bearly Arts glue for that. I decided it didn't need to be popped up. It would be just fine glued down on that. And the Bearly Arts glue is a great liquid glue. It dries fairly fast, but it gives you a little bit of time to move things around too. So it's kind of that good amount of time to move things around, but yet it sets pretty quickly as well. So there you have the greenery on and glued down. And of course, I'm going to come back and add a few more crystals on this one as well. I decided to use some the topaz crystals again. I thought that the topaz would be a good accent since we have so much red and green on this as well. We've got that copper in the background, so the topaz will kind of accent with that copper and everything. So I'm going to add some glue in the middle of my poinsettia. I had it colored, the little pieces colored yellow in there, but I decided it would be just better to just go ahead and add the crystals there, make it a little more shiny and fun in the middle of that poinsettia. I'm using the Gina K pickup tool to pick up my gems. It is a must if you use a lot of gems and crystals and even little pieces of paper. Like if you're cutting out a sentiment, it has an eye and you have that little dot for the eye. I use my pickup tool to pick up that teeny tiny dot that you have to put in place. I use it for a lot of things. It's a great tool to use. So if you're doing a lot of work with gems or needing to pick up little pieces, the wax end of this tool is the perfect thing to use. These topaz gems pick up a lot of the yellow um, and is a good complement when you need a little bit of gold or yellow and a little bit of shininess. They're a great item to have in your stash to add that. And there you go. We have completed our second card. Again, using the rub-ons for our background on this, adding interest with the music notes in the background, and then using the rub-ons as our sentiment. So we didn't have to get anything out to stamp out a sentiment for this one. For my last card, I am going to again use the Candy Cane Christmas stencil pack that I used in the first card. In the first card, you know, I used the bottom of that stencil, which was the Christmas trees. In this card, I went through and I stenciled the top part of it. Here I'm showing you that I used the trees for the first card. For this one, I used the top part and I did the lights, the sentiment that says Happy Holidays, and the gingerbread. And I went ahead and did these off camera. Now, a couple things I want to show you here that I did on this and I found very helpful in working with this stencil set. For instance, with the candy canes, I did these candy canes in red, and then I came back with the next layer, which have the little like stripes parts of the candy cane, and then the little highlights on the lights there. I did those in white, but I used a white gel pen through the stencil instead of trying to use any pigment ink or anything like that. You could have done a white pigment ink. For like the gingerbread men, for the outline of that, for the mouth, the eyes, and the little cheeks, I used alcohol markers through the stencil just because I thought it was a little easier to use those through that stencil. I did blending on some of the other ones. I'm also going to be using the Wicked green color, the Wicked Pack green color. You could also use emerald glitter stock, and I'm using ruby glitter stock. And I just cut a 1/2 inch, um, 2 1/2 inch pieces uh, of each of those colors. And I'm going to do that as the outline of my card. So that's going to be kind of the back behind my image that I'm going to put on here. So I'm just going to glue the green down. And you see, I don't have to have green covering the whole card base because my image is going to cover the good part of it. So I really only need these 1/2 inch strips. So to save my glitter stock or to use some of my scraps actually, I just cut off these 1/2 inch strips instead. I'm going to trim down the green before I add the red on there. I use a generous amount of glue on this, especially where the glitter or the glitter stock is overlapping because you need a little extra glue to attach it to that glitter stock. The glitter does not come off on this glitter stock. It stays on the card, but it's just a little thicker and it needs just a little extra glue to adhere it together. I decided I shouldn't have glued down this one end on the green, so I'm pulling it up before it gets too set because I want to slip my red under there when I get there because I'm kind of coming around and layering it as I come around the card. So I trimmed down the red and I'm going to do the next 1/2 inch strip of green. I picked 1/2 inch because my borders were supposed to be 3/8 of an inch. You're going to see some of them are 3/8 of an inch, some of them are a little smaller than that. I didn't cut my panel exactly the right size. That's okay. It's all good. It'll still be liked by the person that I send it to. They're not going to sit there and measure it with a ruler and say, "Ooh, this isn't the right size." So I'm all good with it being not exactly the right size. So there's my green trimmed down, and then my last piece is this red. And like I said, I'm going to slip it under that top green piece so that my overlapping edges are, a good pattern. So I'll slip it under this green and then I'll come back and glue that green over the top of it after I get it all aligned and everything. I'm going to trim down this red piece and I'm going to trim it a little lower even because that green's going to cover it. I don't want the red showing, so I want to make sure that I trim low enough that that green covers it. Again, it's not going to hurt because nobody will see it with the green covering it. And just glue down that corner of the green. And then we'll be ready to add our gingerbread panel over that. I decided just to glue the gingerbread panel instead of popping it up with foam. I just felt it looked better, sitting closer to that glitter stock rather than popping it up with foam in this instance. So I'm just going to glue it down over the top of that. And you can see my sides are a little bit, the bottom is, the sides are, you see a little more red than you're going to see the top and bottom green, which again is okay. Just happened to work out that way. I don't think anybody will actually notice when whoever receives it. I think it'll be just fine. So glue this down. And we're almost done with this card. Again, using the Candy Cane Christmas stencil collection to make this card. And that is a free gift with purchase of a certain amount that you can see on the flyers during the Black Friday event, which will run on Thursday and Friday. So you can certainly receive that by purchasing a lot of the great Black Friday sales and then get your free gifts. After you make your purchase, you'll have possibly some free gifts. There is a free gift with every purchase. So, if you buy anything, you're going to get a free gift. This is just at a certain level. So there you can see the card. I am going to come back and add some gems. Got to have those gems. I'm just going to add some of the red shift gems on here, just a few random places, again, to give it a little bit of sparkle. I do like the lights at the top. I think that is such a cute stencil, the light part at the top. I think that would be really cool to do like on the top and the bottom of a card and just put something in the center like the sentiment. I think that would be really cool. I think it would be cool just to do it all the way around, even down the sides. I think that would be really neat too. I'm a sucker for a stencil with the kind of lights, and I do like that they give you the little part that to make them kind of twinkle with that white part on the lights. And then that sentiment done with the stencil is really cool, I think. Having it say Happy Holidays by the stenciling it, that's really a neat idea as well. And a few of these red shift gems. We've already got some yellow stars on there from the stencil. And there you have the third card of this set. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video and seeing what cards we made with the free gifts. Enjoy your Black Friday shopping, and I hope that you shop a lot and get lots of free gifts. Happy crafting!